So welcome to the third session, and thank you for coming here and supporting Mawrid cause to spread the knowledge of Quran the way we understand it based on Quran and Sunnah. And so today we're going to be doing the third lecture. The format is going to be the same as in the last one. We changed a few things in the last session because every time we get the feedback, we sit on the table, we analyze it, and we try to see how to improve it. So the questions, we're going to follow the same format. I know you'll have to do some writing, but this is actually good for you too, because that way you clarify the question properly when you're writing it in your head as well. And this way Dr. Saab can handle more questions, because the time is only spent in answering the question. The second, we're going to be sticking to the last session's format in terms of the tea break. We are not taking a break as such. You can consider the whole 2 hours as tea break, so feel free to have tea and refreshment while we are doing the lecture. And after, at 1 o'clock, you can still continue with the refreshment, and interactive session you can do at 1 o'clock when the lecture, and when the lecture is over, then we can have interaction with Dr. Saab. Is going to be here till Zaheer time. Feel free to discuss any question verbally if you like. So the format is going to be half an hour lecture, half an hour question answers based on we're going to take on the paper, and another half an hour lecture followed by another half an hour question answer session. Now for online audience, you can write your questions, but please be brief, because since you have access to the keyboard, you may have a tendency of writing long questions. We're going to be presenting your questions as well. So last portion of the half an hour question answer session will be dedicated to online questions, and the first portion will be dedicated to the live audience. So please, Dr. Saab. Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We begin in the name of the God whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. We started the series of these sessions by talking about the question as to what is deen and what is the ultimate goal and purpose it sets forth to achieve. And we concluded that deen is God's message that He has sent from time to time through His chosen people called prophets, messengers, and the ultimate goal of understanding and following the expectations of deen is that we are able to achieve tazkiyah, purification of the soul, and progress and development in the domain of achieving excellence in morality and spirituality, coming close to God. In the second session, I tried to clarify that the intellect that we humans have is a very important element, very important ability that needs to be employed properly in order for us to understand religion and to be able to benefit from it. There were a few misunderstandings, and I mentioned them, and I talked about what exactly is the proper Quranic perspective about them. Today we take the first and the most important concept that you always deal with when you are talking about religion, and that is God. As in the previous sessions, what I'm doing is that in the first of the 2 sessions, I will talk about the theoretical aspect of it, and then we'll have a question-answer session. And in the second part of it, we will talk about what I call the application of it. How does the understanding and the belief in God impact us and our lives, or ought to do it? So, belief in God. You see, if you take the discussion from where I left in the last session, we've got to use our intellect to be able to understand and believe in God. But what you understand from the Quran is that we humans have a number of different sources that we employ to be able to accept realities. We have a sense perception. We have a number of senses that enable us to feel confident and comfortable that there are certain things which are real. So I'm talking to you, hopefully you feel that what I'm doing is real. And there are things around us that we can see, we can hear, we can touch, we can smell, and we can taste. and all that we do through our sense perception is what causes us to believe and feel comfortable that they're all real. Sometimes it so happens that I personally may not have perceived anything directly, but somebody from amongst you or a few of you have gone through an experience through your sense perception, and you are reliable people, and you come to tell me that, this is what we have perceived. And I would say, well, if good people like you are making a mention of it, it must be true. And if there are many people who put together, come and give an information which is based on their experience of perception, well, that too has to be categorized as a reality. If not quite as certain, well, to quite a degree, it seems to be making sense and does tend to give you some comfort. The Quran tells us that the very first humans that God created to start the journey of humankind, the journey of trial, Adam and Eve, Adam alayhi salam and his wife Hawa alayhi salam, they experienced God in a way which was different from our experience. It was direct. Whether they saw him or not, we are not sure. But the description of the Quran tells us that they had a first-hand experience of dealing with communicating with God. Now, when that happened, obviously they had children, and the children had children, and that is how human race has started. Obviously, the kind of experiences that the couple went through, they must have informed their children about it. I imagine as to what kind of discussions must have been taking place between the earliest couple, or great father and mother, grandfather and grandmother. Well, I'm sure that a good part of their discussions must have been centering around their experiences with God. They talked to him, he gave them instructions, and this experience then came down through generations, and it's still a matter of discussion. That is why it's quite clear that God has been always a household name and a reality. The Quran also tells us that quite apart from this experience, God caused all humans who have come to this world to experience God, to have an understanding and perception of Him before we were given the experience to come to this world. This is what has been described in one of the passages of the Quran, where Quran says that Allah Almighty caused all humans to come together and witness an experience wherein He asked them, "Am I not your Lord?" And we all replied, "Bala, why not?" And this is what He did. He says, to make sure that when we come to this world, we do not present an excuse that we didn't know about this reality because our fathers, our parents, and our environment said something different. We commit polytheism, shirk, because of what others were doing. In order to make sure that that excuse doesn't remain valid, He caused us to go through that experience. In other words, the Quran is telling us that within us humans, we have an intuitive realization, understanding of God, one God. This is something which comes naturally to us. Even if you do not have any arguments, intellectual arguments to defend your case, you have a feeling, you have a confidence, you feel inclined. Why? Because you already have gone through a certain experience, not based on your sense perception, but something which really is with you by birth. It's inborn, it's natural, it's something which is intuitive. The Quran has given a reason for it. Like we all have an understanding of what is right from what is wrong, what is good and what is bad, which is a moral law that every human has been provided with. Likewise, there is this understanding of God. However, sooner or later, we have to come to discuss the role of intellect. How do we intellectually appreciate God? The Quran gives its presentation based on the fact that, you know, you have the understanding of God with you already. The fact that your ancestors, your great grandfather, Adam and Eve, they experienced God, but also continues to invite the attention of our intellect and urge us to think, reflect, see what's around you, and come to conclusions. What exactly does intellect do to us? Intellect is an ability that has been provided to us that actually analyzes, categorizes facts, and then enables us to draw conclusions. You know, a popular example that is given is that you see a smoke billowing somewhere at a distance, and even though you've not seen fire, you come to the conclusion that because you see smoke, there has to be fire as well. Now, this is what you have come to learn through your experience, and your intellect is enabling you to come to a conclusion which you've not seen with your eyes, but it's so logical. It's based on your understanding that one should lead to the other. Likewise, science has been able to make tremendous progress on the basis of using the same ability that we humans have. We have facts before us, and then we draw conclusions. The fact that there is gravity, which is an ability that this planet of ours has, which attracts objects towards it, is something that we have not seen, nor heard, nor touched, nor smelt, nor tasted. It's something that we have been able to understand logically through our intellect, because objects are drawn towards the earth. Therefore, there has to be an ability in it that causes it to happen. Likewise is the case with many other such experiences, such observations that the Quran points at to the reader to look at and then to draw conclusions from it. For example, the Quran draws our attention to the fact that the world that we are living in is actually functioning on the basis of a certain law, a certain discipline, which is being followed. This discipline is what we observe in our daily life. We know that the sun rises and it sets. We know that there are seasons that come and go. We know that there is night and there is day, and so on. We are confident that when we sow seeds in the soil and there is rain that falls and then there is sunshine, there is bound to be a result in the form of crops, and so on. What we find is therefore that the world that we are experiencing enables us to understand that there is something called discipline and control. There are heavenly bodies that we can see are numerous in number. The more we are able to explore this universe that we are a part of, the more we realize that the number of these heavenly bodies is huge, unimaginably big. Now, what happens is that we see that there is no disaster, there are no accidents. The world around us is functioning smoothly. Obviously, there is something that you can describe as control or discipline that is there. This is what our intellect concludes, ought to conclude. This world is not happening haphazardly. It is not really a jumble of objects which are there, and there is no control. So one of the things that we come to the conclusion is that the world that we are living in is actually controlled, and there is discipline, and that is something that needs to be noted. But not only that, we also observe, if we are looking at the surroundings keenly, that the world that we are living in is not just functioning in a systematic, disciplined way. The way it is proceeding, it is actually enabling us to survive. Our needs are being met. We as humans have come to this world with a number of needs. We are vulnerable. We are dependent. We need water to drink, we need food to eat, we need air to breathe, we need so many other things to survive. And what is happening is that the world that we are part of is enabling all our needs to be met adequately, properly. This is another observation that we make. It's not something that can be denied. No matter whatever we need to survive, when in actual fact what we need to also thrive, to flourish, everything seems to be available. That is another conclusion that the intellect has to draw. You just can't stay away from concluding that. Likewise, what we know is that the life that we are going through, although we didn't ask for it, we didn't deserve it, but the fact of the matter is that even though we have come here without us being asked, we generally speaking like what we're experiencing. It's not that after having come to this world we say that, oh goodness me, it really is a burden and let me go back, let me just protest and move away. Well, we have difficulties, we have problems, we have tensions, yet in the case of most humans, we like what we're experiencing. Somebody who dies, from people who are close to us, is an occasion of sadness. We feel bad about it. And of course, every newcomer is welcome. We have our birthdays because we believe that, life is brilliant. We never did anything for it, and yet we got it. In other words, what we have in this life is another aspect that we notice, that you are getting things which you don't even deserve, and what you are getting is brilliant, and you get a good feeling about it. And yet another observation that the Qur'an continues to point at is that what we find is that the manner this world is functioning, you do observe that there is planning, there is very wise planning that is causing the entire system to function. For example, there are certain objectives that seem to be there in this worldly life of ours that need to be achieved. You need to achieve the objective of, for example, a new child coming to this world with numerous needs, completely dependent on others. You all know that kids, when they are very young, they're completely dependent on us. They need everything to survive that we provide them with. And it really is something that causes us to be tested. And yet the fact of the matter is that all those needs are adequately, properly, honestly, happily met. Why? Because even before the arrival of a new child, there's already a welcoming atmosphere in the family. You're already prepared for it. So there is a need, and there is arrangement for it. You need a certain atmosphere for the egg to be hatched and the chick to come out, and for that purpose, the mother hen gets prepared for it, and something happens to it that causes it to do exactly what is needed for the egg to be broken after 21 days and the living being to move out. How is it happening? We don't know. There seems to be a planning going on, and that planning is actually implemented so meticulously that what you find is that there is an objective that needs to be achieved, and that objective is fully met by an arrangement that has been made. So what the Quran wants us to do is to use our intellect properly, in a fair way, and to conclude. And the Quran tells us that you find control because there is somebody who is controlling. There is the one who is Al-Aziz, is Al-Qadir, wa huwa ala kulli shayin qadir. And that is why what you find around you is in your environment are realities that cause you to believe that there is control that is at display. Likewise, if our needs are being met, they are being met because there is what you call providence, rububiyyat, that is at display. And this is happening because there is a Rabb, there is somebody who actually cares for our needs and is actually responding to those needs by providing us with whatever we need. There is the phenomenon of us getting whatever we need without us deserving them. We believe this life is brilliant and we did nothing to get it because there is a God who is merciful. And likewise, we find wisdom in the environment because there is a wise God, Al-Hakim. So God is telling us that if you look at what is around you with your intellect properly employed and you draw conclusions the way you draw conclusions for whatever needs you have in this life, you will come to realize that you see the attribute of control, the attribute of providence, the attribute of mercy, the attribute of wisdom, all showing their results. And this is because there is a God, the Creator, the Almighty, who has all these attributes and they are at display. And we are the beneficiaries of it. If you don't get that conclusion, then you should be somebody worried, confused, struggling to look for answers, and not as yet fully satisfied with yourself and your surroundings. Because the way we have been created and designed, we think, we ponder, we have questions, we have puzzles, and we look for answers. And so long as we do not get answers, we continue to search. So the Qur'an says that this whole existence that we are a part of, it would continue to worry you, to puzzle you, so long as you get an answer, a clear answer to it. And the answer is Allahu Nur Samawati wal Ard. Belief in God is the light of the heavens and the earth. When you believe in God, you get the answer that whatever you had in your mind as questions through whatever you were looking at, whatever you were perceiving, and not being able to come to a clear conclusion, is fully answered and satisfied only when you are able to get the clear picture and understanding of God. And this is how we are introduced to God. Some people already know it. Why? Because there's already intuitively we have been given an understanding. We have the understanding of God in our culture because the earliest humans who came to this world, they experienced God. And of course, this is also supported and supplemented by the intellectual probing that we make, that we are able to conclude through whatever we perceive. The Quran tells us that the God who has created us, who is running the affairs of this world, is the one who can only be understood more through understanding his attributes. This life that we are leading is a life that can only become meaningful when we are attached to the God who has created us through the understanding of his attributes and through implementing and relating his attributes to our lives. About his attributes, the Quran tells us a few things that enable us to solve the problems, to sort out the riddles that we are confronted with in this life. For example, one understanding that the Quran tells us is that the attributes of God are all perfect. All good attributes belong to God. All of them are perfect, and all perfect attributes are simultaneously functioning. So when you believe in God and you find sometimes that you are puzzled, unable to understand a few concepts, it's because God is perfect and we are imperfect. God can do everything and we can do very little. And when we start thinking about God and implementing the understanding of the concept of God that we have through the divine revelation, God's message, you come to appreciate God more and more. One of the puzzles that people are confronted with is the question of predestination. Whatever is happening now is known before. The puzzle is that if everything was known from before, then what on earth are we doing here? And why are we responsible for what we are doing? This and many other questions can only be answered if we have the correct understanding of God, His attributes, and the manner they operate. So, trying to understand a very long debate and summarizing it, I would say that God knows everything and His attribute of knowledge is perfect. But God is also fair and His attribute of justice is also perfect. And the two are simultaneously functioning, simultaneously operational. God is perfectly knowledgeable really means that He ought to know everything that we do, everything that we did in the past, we are doing right now, we'll do in the future. If He doesn't know the future, He's not perfect, He's not God. The other thing is that He's fair, and therefore He will never make us accountable for anything that we did not do independently, freely, on our own volition. Now, both are realities. So when I am doing something good, even though God knows it from before, because He is perfect, He also knows the fact that what I'm doing independently. I'm doing it freely, without anybody pushing me into it. And when the two things we understand together, with God's perfect attributes simultaneously operating, well, we get the answer. Not the complete answer, because the complete answer is what we cannot get with our limited knowledge. But of course, if we do not understand something completely, it doesn't really mean that it's wrong. What it means is that we are limited in our ability to comprehend and fathom the total concept of God. Things we don't understand could be for two reasons. We don't understand certain things because they're wrong, and we don't understand certain things because they are beyond our comprehension. When somebody says 2 plus 2 is equal to 5, we don't understand it because it's wrong. But if it's somebody who is an expert in mathematics and writes before us an equation which we don't understand, well, what we'll say is that we don't understand. We know that there is some reality in what this gentleman is describing, but we cannot go beyond it. So God's attributes, the way they have been described, they help us in understanding the realities of this life and explaining them properly. But of course, there are certain aspects of the reality that even though we can appreciate somewhat, we cannot go beyond a certain limit, not because the understanding and the reality of them is wrong, but simply because we have our limitations. So obviously, whatever abilities that we have with us are there as a blessing. But we know about all our abilities that they are limited. They are not perfect. Likewise is our ability to intellectualize, to use our understanding and our intellect. Finally, the present world of ours has seen a phenomenon, something that was scarcely known to the people of the earlier times, a concept, an understanding, call it belief, that is atheism. When the Qur'an was revealed, the Qur'an never mentions it because there were no atheists when the Qur'an was getting revealed. This is something, as I said, new. This is something that has come about as a consequence of some scientific theories put across. Big Bang and the theory of evolution being the chief amongst them. So that there are people, and they are growing alarmingly in number, who think that this world that we are living in is without anyone who created it or who is running it. In other words, we came about without anyone doing it, and the show is running without anyone bothering to do it. And the reason why they have come to this conclusion is that they believe that we now know quite confidently that the process of the creation of this world started with a big explosion called the Big Bang, and this process is continuing, has continued over a very long period of time, and it's an ongoing process. Obviously, this is a long debate, but what I'm saying is that if you look at it from the point of view of the understanding of the Quranic explanation of the reality, we do not need to deny either of the two theories. There could be some debate about the details of it, but there is no need to reject anything offhand for fear of believing or accepting something that is against the Quran and God's word. The fact of the matter is that the problem with this line of thinking is that those who present Big Bang theory and the theory of evolution to explain God are only answering the question, how? How did it all come about? They are not even discussing who did it. It is as if you are able to explain as to how this world came about, you are, as a consequence, you are also explaining who did it. Or that you're explaining that because the process is known, therefore we know that the process itself was responsible for what is happening. That is something which, of course, is not very convincing, logical, intellectually sound, because we know that no matter whatever happens in this world, whatever observations we have, whatever we find happening and we conclude about them, there are two aspects. One is, how is a certain thing taking place and who is doing it. The Quran tells us that this world was created by God and He is running the affairs of this world. The fact of the matter is that if you read the Quran carefully, you would know that the Quran is giving a very clear indication of the fact that man came about the way he is now after having gone through a very long process of evolution. But that evolution was not necessarily the same as the modern man understands in details, but the fact is God Himself caused us to be what we are after having required us to go through a very long process. But most certainly it was God ordained, fashioned by Him, and what we have right now in front of us are human beings who were created by God, and God is causing their needs to be satisfied through His wisdom, His providence, His control, His mercy. That's about the first part of our discussion. If I may have questions, we'll talk about them.
We can start the QA session. I have some questions in my hand, so we're going to start with that, and then I can collect more. Thank you.
Let's make sure that I don't mix them up.
Yeah, this time we're going to follow a protocol.